Okay, it is 8 o'clock. Oh, I never did a post on Bluesky today, did I? Well, let's switch over here. I'll drop a quick post and we'll get into the reading. It'll be just a moment. Hang with me, guys. I'm normally pretty good about that. Alright. Oh, and I managed to botch the thumbnail. I am just all out of sorts today, aren't I? Oh, well. So, let's just go ahead and jump into the reading, shall we? We only have about 2 chapters left tonight, until we reach the end of our journey with Wuthering Heights. That will be... Oh, I've lost track of how many books we've finished now. We've been going at a pretty good clip. Honestly, since we've started this, I've been reading quite a lot more than I usually would. It's been a nice change. But that said, let's just go ahead and jump right back into things where we left off. So, last night we finished up chapter 32. We found that Heathcliff had... Are we up to 5 already? Wow. Last time we found that Heathcliff had died while Mr. Lockwood was away, and that it seems that Miss Catherine and Hareton have been getting on rather well in his absence. So we'll tonight find out how Heathcliff met his end, um, and how things at the Grange and the Heights both sort of ended up the way they are as we saw them. This is kind of the first point we've been into the present, or I guess we're back in the past again. It's hard telling at this point. This book bounces back and forth between times at willy-nilly. But we'll find out how things will resolve themselves, and then we'll just have some time to discuss and get a general feel for the book. I know there's some opinions and thoughts, and this is generally one of those books that is well thought of, but often not understood. People are aware of it, but maybe not have read it, or have read some of it, or have been exposed to it, but haven't had a chance to really dig into it. So it's a good chance to really review it and have a feel for ourselves, decide what we think. But that's enough preemptive talk. Let's go ahead and get through these last couple chapters, and then we can really sit down and review and dissect and examine our thoughts. And so we return with chapter 33. On the morrow of that Monday, Earnshaw being still unable to follow his ordinary employments, and therefore remaining about the house, I speedily found it would be impracticable to retain my charge beside me, as, heretofore, she got downstairs before me, and out into the garden, where she had seen her cousin performing some easy work, and when I went to bid them come to breakfast, I saw she had persuaded him to clear a large space of ground from currant and gooseberry bushes, and they were busy planning together an importation of plants from the Grange. I was terrified at the devastation, which had been accomplished in a brief half-hour. The black currant trees were the apple of Joseph's eye, and she had just fixed her choice of a flower bed in the midst of them. "There! That will be all shown to the master," I exclaimed, "the minute it is discovered. And what excuse have you to offer for taking such liberties with the garden? We shall have a fine explosion at the head of it. See if we don't. Mr. Hareton, I wonder you should have no more wit than to go and make that mess at her bidding." "I'd forgotten they were Joseph's," answered Earnshaw, rather puzzled. "But I'll tell him I did it." We always ate our meals with Mr. Heathcliff. I held the mistress's post in making tea and carving, so I was indispensable at table. Catherine usually sat by me, but today she stole nearer to Hareton, and I presently saw she would have no more discretion in her friendship than she had in her hostility. "Now, mind you don't talk with and notice your cousin too much," were my whispered instructions as we entered the room. "It will certainly annoy Mr. Heathcliff, and he'll be mad at you both." "I am not going to," she answered. The minute after, she had sidled to him, and was sticking primroses in his plate of porridge. He dared not speak to her there. He dared hardly look, and yet she went on teasing, till he was twice on the point of being provoked to laugh. I frowned, and then she glanced towards the master, whose mind was occupied on other subjects than his company, as his countenance evinced, and she grew serious for an instant, scrutinizing him with deep gravity. Afterwards she turned, and recommenced her nonsense, at last. Hareton uttered a smothered laugh. Mr. Heathcliff started. His eye rapidly surveyed our faces. Catherine met it with her accustomed look of nervousness, and yet defiance, which he abhorred. "It is well you are out of my reach," he exclaimed. "What fiend possesses you to stare back at me continually with those infernal eyes? Down with them, and don't remind me of your existence again. I thought I had cured you of laughing." "It was me," muttered Hareton. "What do you say?" demanded the master. Hareton looked at his plate, and did not repeat the confession. Mr. Heathcliff looked at him a bit, and then silently resumed his breakfast and his interrupted musing. We had nearly finished, and the two young people prudently shifted wider asunder, so I anticipated no further disturbance during that sitting, when Joseph appeared at the door, revealing by his quivering lip and furious eyes that the outrage committed on his precious shrubs was detected. He must have seen Cathy and her cousin about the spot before he examined it, for while his jaws worked like those of a cow chewing its cud, and rendered his speech difficult to understand, he began, "I mun have my wage, and I mun go. I had aimed to de where I'd sarved for 60 year, and I thought I'd lug my books up to the garret with all my bits of stuff, and they should have kitchened to this sale for the sake of quietness. It were hard to get my own on Hurston, but I thought I could do that. But nah, she was taking my garden from me, and by the heart, master, I cannot stand it. Y'all may bend to the yoke and you will. I know and used to. And an old man don't soon get used to new burdens. I'd rather arm bite my hand with sup with hammer in the road. Oh, man. Oh, I can't wait till we're done. Now, idiot, interrupted Heathcliff. Cut it short. What's your grievance? I'll interfere in no quarrels between you and Nellie. She may thrust you into the coal hole for anything I care. For once, I agree with Heathcliff. It's not Nellie, answered Joseph. I shouldn't shift for Nellie, nasty little naughty she is. Thank God, Shoo cannot stale to sour old Nob D. Shoo were never so handsome, but what a body would look at her, about winking. It's the own flaysome, graceless queen. That's witched our lad with her bold een and her forward ways, till, nay, it fair burst my heart. He's forgotten all I done for him, and made on him, and gone and riven up a whole row of grandest currant trees in its garden. And here he lamented outright, unmanned by a sense of his bitter injuries, and Earnshaw's ingratitude and dangerous condition. Is the fool drunk? Asked Mr. Heathcliff. Hareton, is it you he's finding fault with? I've pulled up 2 or 3 bushes, replied the young man, but I'm going to set 'em again. And why have you pulled them up? Said the master. Catherine wisely put in her tongue. We wanted to plant some flowers there, she cried. I'm the only person to blame, for I wished him to do it. And who the devil gave you leave to touch a stick about the place? Demanded her father-in-law, much surprised. And who ordered you to obey her? He added, turning to Hareton. The latter was speechless. His cousin replied, You shouldn't grudge a few yards of earth for me to ornament, when you have taken all my land. Your land, insolent slut! You never had any, said Heathcliff. And my money, she continued, returning his angry glare, and meantime biting a piece of crust, the remnant of her breakfast. Silence! He exclaimed. Get done and be gone. And Hareton's land, and his money, pursued the reckless thing. Hareton and I are friends now, and I shall tell him all about you. The master seemed confounded a moment. He grew pale and rose up, eyeing her all the while with an expression of mortal hate. If you strike me, Hareton will strike you, she said, so you may as well sit down. If Hareton does not turn you out of the room, I'll strike him to hell, thundered Heathcliff. Damnable witch! Dare you pretend to rouse him against me? Off with her! Do you hear? Fling her into the kitchen! I'll kill her, Ellen Dean, if you let her come into my sight again. Hareton tried, under his breath, to persuade her to go. Drag her away, he cried savagely. Are you trying to talk? And he approached to execute his own command. He'll not obey you, wicked man, any more, said Catherine, and he'll soon detest you as much as I do. Wisht, muttered the young man, reproachfully. I will not hear you speak so to him. Have done. But you won't let him strike me, she cried. Come then, he whispered earnestly. It was too late. Heathcliff had caught hold of her. Now you go, he said to Earnshaw. Accursed witch! This time she has provoked me, when I could not bear it, and I'll make her repent it forever. She had his hand in her hair. Hareton attempted to release her locks, entreating him not to hurl her that once. Heathcliff's black eyes flashed. He seemed ready to tear Catherine in pieces, and I was just worked up to risk coming to the rescue when, of a sudden, his fingers relaxed. He shifted his grasp from her head to her arm, and gazed intently in her face. Then he drew his hand over his eyes, stood a moment to collect himself, apparently, and turning anew to Catherine, said, with assumed calmness, You must learn to avoid putting me in a passion, or I shall really murder you sometime. Go with Mrs. Dean, and keep with her, and confine your insolence to her ears. As to Hareton Earnshaw, if I see him listen to you, I'll send him seeking his bread where he can get it. Your love will make him an outcast and a beggar. Nellie, take her, and leave me. All of you, leave me! I led my young lady out. She was too glad of her escape to resist. The other followed, and Mr. Heathcliff had the room to himself till dinner. I had counselled Catherine to dine upstairs, but as soon as he perceived her vacant seat, he sent me to call her. He spoke to none of us, ate very little, and went out directly afterwards, intimating that he should not return before evening. The 2 new friends established themselves in the house during his absence, where I heard Hareton sternly check his cousin on her offering a revelation of her father-in-law's conduct to his father. He said he wouldn't suffer a word to be uttered in his disparagement. If he were the devil, it didn't signify. He would stand by him, and he'd rather she would abuse himself, as she used to, than begin on Mr. Heathcliff. Catherine was waxing cross at this, but he found means to make her hold her tongue, by asking how she would like him to speak ill of her father. Then she comprehended that Earnshaw took the master's reputation home to himself, and was attached by ties stronger than reason could break, chains, forged by habit, which it would be cruel to attempt to loosen. She showed a good heart, thenceforth, in avoiding both complaints and expressions of antipathy concerning Heathcliff, and confessed to me her sorrow that she had endeavoured to raise a bad spirit between him and Hareton. Indeed, I don't believe she has ever breathed a syllable in the latter's hearing against her oppressor since. When this slight disagreement was over, they were friends again, and as busy as possible in their several occupations of pupil and teacher. I came in to sit with them after I had done my work, and I felt so soothed and comforted to watch them, that I did not notice how time got on. You know, they both appeared in a measure my children. I had long been proud of one, and now, I was sure, the other would be a source of equal satisfaction. His honest, warm, and intelligent nature shook off rapidly the clouds of ignorance and degradation in which it had been bred, and Catherine's sincere commendations acted as a spur to his industry. His brightening mind brightened his features, and added spirit and nobility to their aspect. I could hardly fancy it the same individual I had beheld on the day I discovered my little lady at Wuthering Heights, after her expedition to the crags. While I admired, and they laboured, dusk drew on, and with it returned the master. He came upon us quite unexpectedly, entering by the front way, and had a full view of the whole three, ere we could raise our heads to glance at him. Well, I reflected, there was never a pleasanter or more harmless sight, and it will be a burning shame to scold them. The red firelight glowed on their two bonny heads, and revealed their faces animated with the eager interest of children, for, though he was 23 and she 18, each had so much of novelty to feel and learn, that neither experienced nor evinced the sentiments of sober, disenchanted maturity. They lifted their eyes together, to encounter Mr. Heathcliff. Perhaps you have never remarked that their eyes are precisely similar, and they are those of Catherine Earnshaw. The present Catherine has no other likeness to her, except a breadth of forehead, and a certain arch of the nostril that makes her appear rather haughty, whether she will or not. With Hareton, the resemblance is carried farther. It is singular, at all times. Then it was particularly striking, because his senses were alert, and his mental faculties wakened to unwonted activity. I suppose this resemblance disarmed Mr. Heathcliff. He walked to the hearth, in evident agitation, but it quickly subsided as he looked at the young man, or, I should say, altered its character, for it was there yet. He took the book from his hand, and glanced at the open page, then returned it without any observation, merely signing Catherine away. Her companion lingered very little behind her, and I was about to depart also, but he bid me sit still. "It is a poor conclusion, is it not?" he observed, having brooded a while on the scene he had just witnessed. "An absurd termination to my violent exertions. I get levers and mattocks to demolish the two houses, and train myself to be capable of working like Hercules, and when everything is ready and in my power, I find the will to lift a slate off either roof has vanished. My old enemies have not beaten me. Now would be the precise time to revenge myself on their representatives. I could do it, and none could hinder me, but where is the use? I don't care for striking. I can't take the trouble to raise my hand. That sounds as if I had been laboring the whole time only to exhibit a fine trait of magnanimity. It is far from being the case. I have lost the faculty of enjoying their destruction, and I am too idle to destroy for nothing. Nellie, there is a strange change approaching. I'm in its shadow at present. I take so little interest in my daily life that I hardly remember to eat and drink. Those two who have left the room are the only objects which retain a distinct material appearance to me, and that appearance causes me pain, amounting to agony. About her I won't speak, and I don't desire to think, but I earnestly wish she were invisible. Her presence invokes only maddening sensation. He moves me differently, and yet if I could do it without seeming insane, I'd never see him again. You'll perhaps think me rather inclined to become so," he added, making an effort to smile, "if I try to describe the thousand forms of past associations and ideas he awakens or embodies. But you'll not talk of what I tell you, and my mind is so eternally secluded in itself, it is tempting, at last, to turn it out to another. 5 minutes ago, Hareton seemed a personification of my youth, not a human being. I felt to him in such a variety of ways that it would have been impossible to have accosted him rationally. In the first place, his startling likeness to Catherine connected him fearfully with her. That, however, which you may suppose the most potent to arrest my imagination, is actually the least. For what is not connected with her to me? And what does not recall her? I cannot look down to this floor, but her features are shaped in the flags. In every cloud, in every tree, filling the air at night and caught by glimpses in every object by day, I am surrounded by her image. The most ordinary faces of men and women, my own features, mock me with a resemblance. The entire world is a dreadful collection of memoranda that she did exist, and that I have lost her. Well, Hareton's aspect was the ghost of my immortal love, of my wild endeavors to hold my right, my degradation, my pride, my happiness, and my anguish. But it is frenzy to repeat these thoughts to you. Only it will let you know why, with a reluctance to be always alone, his society is no benefit, rather an aggravation of that constant torment I suffer, and it partly contributes to render me regardless how he and his cousin go on together. I can give them no attention any more. But what do you mean by a change, Mr. Heathcliff? I said, alarmed at his manner, though he was neither in danger of losing his senses nor dying, according to my judgment. He was quite strong and healthy, and, as to his reason, from childhood he had a delight in dwelling on dark things and entertaining odd fancies. He might have had a monomania on the subject of his departed idol, but on every other point his wits were as sound as mine. I shall not know that till it comes, he said. I'm only half conscious of it now. You have no feeling of illness, have you? I asked. No, Nellie, I have not, he answered. Then you are not afraid of death? I pursued. Afraid? No, he replied. I have neither a fear, nor a presentiment, nor a hope of death. Why should I? With my hard constitution and temperate mode of living, and unperilous occupations, I ought to, and probably shall, remain above ground till there is scarcely a black hair on my head. And yet I cannot continue in this condition. I have to remind myself to breathe, almost to remind my heart to beat. It is like bending back a stiff spring. It is by compulsion that I do the slightest act not prompted by one thought, and by compulsion that I notice anything alive or dead, which is not associated with one universal idea. I have a single wish, and my whole being and faculties are yearning to attain it. They have yearned toward it so long and so unwaveringly that I am convinced it will be reached, and soon, because it has devoured my existence. I am swallowed up in the anticipation of its fulfillment. My confessions have not relieved me, but they may account for some otherwise unaccountable phrases of humor which I show. Oh God, it is a long fight. I wish it were over. He began to pace the room, muttering terrible things to himself, till I was inclined to believe, as he said Joseph did, that conscience had turned his heart to an earthly hell. I wondered greatly how it would end, though he seldom before had revealed this state of mind, even by looks. It was his habitual mood, I had no doubt. He asserted it himself, but not a soul, from his general bearing, would have conjectured the fact. You did not, when you saw him, Mr. Lockwood, and at that period of which I speak, he was just the same as then, only fonder of continued solitude, and perhaps still more laconic in company. That brings us to the end of chapter 33. And it definitely sounds like Heathcliff has found that there is no joy in completing his revenge. In the winning and completion of all of his endeavors, there's no satisfaction. There's nothing that can bring back the spark. I really can't feel sorry for him, but I'm not sure if this is meant to be a redemption or a come to light or just a call out that, maybe you shouldn't be so obsessed with everything, with the single focus. At the end of that road, there's nothing. It's just ashes and dust. And it certainly sounds like he's having some self-terminating thoughts, shall we say. Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah, you never believe it. When the bitter and resentment is all gone, there's nothing left. Well, that's nonsense. That's crazy. You think that's how you get to success, right? All right, I think we only have one chapter remaining. Let me double check that here. Yep, so this is the last chapter we're coming up on. So let's just go ahead and plow right through, and then we can probably take a break for a couple minutes and then come back for some discussion. So we have the last chapter of Wuthering Heights, chapter 34. For some days after that evening, Mr. Heathcliff shunned meeting us at meals, yet he would not consent formally to exclude Hareton and Cathy. He had an aversion to yielding so completely to his feelings, choosing rather to absent himself, and eating once in 24 hours seemed sufficient sustenance for him. One night, after the family were in bed, I heard him go downstairs, and out at the front door. I did not hear him re-enter, and in the morning I found he was still away. We were in April then. The weather was sweet and warm, the grass as green as showers and sun could make it, and the 2 dwarf apple trees near the southern wall in full bloom. After breakfast, Catherine insisted on my bringing a chair and sitting with my work under the fir trees at the end of the house, as she beguiled Hareton, who had perfectly recovered from his accident, to dig out and arrange her little garden, which was shifted to that corner by the influence of Joseph's complaints. I was comfortably reveling in the spring fragrance around, and the beautiful soft blue overhead, when my young lady, who had run down near the gate to procure some primrose roots for a border, returned, only half laden, and informed us that Mr. Heathcliff was coming in. And he spoke to me, she added, with a perplexed countenance. What did he say? Asked Hareton. He told me to be gone as fast as I could, she answered, but he looked so different from his usual look that I stopped a moment to stare at him. How? He inquired. Why, almost bright and cheerful. No, almost nothing. Very much excited and wild and glad, she replied. Night walking amuses him then, I remarked, affecting a careless manner, in reality as surprised as she was, and anxious to ascertain the truth of her statement, for to see the master looking glad would not be an everyday spectacle. I framed an excuse to go in. Heathcliff stood at the open door. He was pale, and he trembled. Yet, certainly, he had a strange, joyful glitter in his eyes that altered the aspect of his whole face. Will you have some breakfast? I said. You must be hungry, rambling about all night. I wanted to discover where he had been, but I did not like to ask directly. No, I'm not hungry, he answered, averting his head, and speaking rather contemptuously, as if he guessed I was trying to divine the occasion of his good humor. I felt perplexed. I didn't know whether it were not a proper opportunity to offer a bit of admonition. I don't think it right to wander out of doors, I observed, instead of being in bed. It is not wise, at any rate, this moist season. I dare say you'll catch a bad cold, or a fever. You have something the matter with you now. Nothing but what I can bear, he replied, and with the greatest pleasure, provided you'll leave me alone. Get in and don't annoy me. I obeyed, and in passing, I noticed he breathed as fast as a cat. Yes, I reflected to myself, we shall have a fit of illness. I cannot conceive what he's been doing. That noon, he sat down to dinner with us, and received a heaped-up plate from my hands, as if he intended to make amends for previous fasting. I've neither cold nor fever, Nellie, he remarked, in allusion to my morning's speech, and I'm ready to do justice to the food you give me. He took his knife and fork, and was going to commence eating, when the inclination appeared to become suddenly extinct. He laid them on the table, looked eagerly towards the window, then rose and went out. We saw him walking to and fro in the garden while we concluded our meal, and Earnshaw said he'd go and ask why he would not dine. He thought we had grieved him some way. Well, is he coming? cried Catherine, when her cousin returned. Nay, he answered, but he's not angry. He seemed rather pleased, rarely pleased indeed. Only, I made him impatient by speaking to him twice, and then he bid me off to you. He wondered how I could want the company of anybody else. I set his plate to keep warm on the fender, and after an hour or two he re-entered, when the room was clear, in no degree calmer, the same unnatural, appearance of joy under his black brows, the same bloodless hue, and his teeth visible, now and then, in a kind of smile, his frame shivering, not as one shivers with chill or weakness, but as a tight, stretched cord vibrates, a strong thrilling rather than trembling. I will ask what is the matter, I thought, or who should, and I exclaimed, Have you heard any good news, Mr. Heathcliff? You look uncommonly animated. Where should good news come from to me? He said. I'm animated with hunger, and, seemingly, I must not eat. Your dinner is here, I returned. Why won't you get it? I don't want it now, he muttered hastily. I'll wait till supper. And, Nellie, once for all, let me beg you to warn Hareton and the other away from me. I wish to be troubled by nobody. I wish to have this place to myself. Is there some new reason for this banishment? I inquired. Tell me, why are you so queer, Mr. Heathcliff? Where were you last night? I'm not putting the question through idle curiosity, but... You are putting the question through very idle curiosity, he interrupted with a laugh. Yet I'll answer it. Last night I was on the threshold of hell. Today I am within sight of my heaven. I have my eyes on it. Hardly 3 feet to sever me, and now you'd better go. You'll neither see nor hear anything to frighten you, if you refrain from prying. Having swept the hearth and wiped the table, I departed, more perplexed than ever. He did not quit the house again that afternoon, and no one intruded on his solitude till at 8 o'clock I deemed it proper, though unsummoned, to carry a candle and his supper to him. He was leaning against the ledge of an open lattice, but not looking out. His face was turned to the interior gloom. The fire had smoldered to ashes. The room was filled with the damp, mild air of the cloudy evening, and so still that not only the murmur of the back down Gimmerton was indistinguishable, but its ripples and its gurgling over the pebbles, or through the large stones which it could not cover. I uttered an ejaculation of discontent at seeing the dismal grate, and commenced shutting the casements, one after another, till I came to his. "Must I close this?" I asked, in order to rouse him, for he would not stir. The light flashed on his features as I spoke. Oh, Mr. Lockwood, I cannot express what a terrible start I got by the momentary view. Those deep black eyes, that smile and ghastly paleness. It appeared to me, not Mr. Heathcliff, but a goblin, and in my terror I let the candle bend towards the wall, and it left me in darkness. "Yes, close it," he replied, in his familiar voice. "There, that is pure awkwardness. Why did you hold the candle horizontally? Be quick, and bring another." I hurried out in a foolish state of dread, and said to Joseph, "The master wishes you to take him a light and rekindle the fire," for I dared not go in myself again just then. Joseph rattled some fire into the shovel and went, but he brought it back immediately, with the supper tray in his other hand, explaining that Mr. Heathcliff was going to bed, and he wanted nothing to eat till morning. We heard him mount the stairs directly. He did not proceed to his ordinary chamber, but turned into that with the panelled bed, its window, as I mentioned before, as wide enough for anybody to get through, and it struck me that he plotted another midnight excursion, of which we had no suspicion. Is he a ghoul or a vampire? I mused. I had read of such hideous incarnate demons, and then I set myself to reflect how I tended him in infancy, and watched him grow to youth, and followed him almost through his whole course, and what absurd nonsense it was to yield to that sense of horror. But where did he come from, the dark little thing, harbored by a good man to his bane? Muttered superstition, as I dozed into unconsciousness, and I began, half dreaming, to weary myself with imagining some fit parentage for him, and repeating my waking meditations. I tracked his existence over again with grim variations, at last, picturing his death and funeral, of which all I can remember is being exceedingly vexed at having the task of dictating an inscription for his monument, and consulting the sexton about it, and, as he had no surname, and we could not tell his age, we were obliged to content ourselves with a single word, Heathcliff. That came true. We were. If you enter the kirkyard, you'll read, on his headstone, only that, and the date of his death. Dawn restored me to common sense. I rose and went into the garden, as soon as I could see, to ascertain if there were any footmarks under his window. There were none. He has stayed at home, I thought, and he'll be all right today. I prepared breakfast for the household, as was my usual custom, but told Hareton and Catherine to get theirs ere the master come down, for he lay late. They preferred taking it out of doors, under the trees, and I set a little table to accommodate them. On my re-entrance, I found Mr. Heathcliff below. He and Joseph were conversing about some farming business. He gave clear, minute directions concerning the matter discussed, but he spoke rapidly, and turned his head continually aside, and had some excited expression, even more exaggerated. When Joseph quitted the room, he took his seat in the place he generally chose, and I put a basin of coffee before him. He drew it nearer, and then rested his arms on the table, and looked at the opposite wall, as I supposed, surveying one particular portion up and down, with glittering, restless eyes, and with such eager interest that he stopped breathing during half a minute together. "Come now," I exclaimed, pushing some bread against his hand. "Eat and drink that, while it is hot. It has been waiting near an hour." He didn't notice me, and yet he smiled. I'd rather have seen him gnash his teeth than smile so. "Mr. Heathcliff! Master!" I cried. "Don't, for God's sake, stare as if you saw an unearthly vision." "Don't, for God's sake, shout so loud," he replied. "Turn round and tell me, are we by ourselves?" "Of course," was my answer. "Of course we are." Still, I involuntarily obeyed him, as if I was not quite sure. With a sweep of his hand, he cleared a vacant space in front among the breakfast things, and leaned forward to gaze more at his ease. Now I perceived he was not looking at the wall, for when I regarded him alone, it seemed exactly what he gazed at something within 2 yards distance, and whatever it was, it communicated, apparently, both pleasure and pain in exquisite extremes. At least the anguished yet raptured expression of his countenance suggested that idea. The fancied object was not fixed, either. His eyes pursued it with unwearied diligence, and, even in speaking to me, were never weaned away. I vainly reminded him of his protracted abstinence from food. If he stirred to touch anything in compliance with my entreaties, if he stretched his hand out to get a piece of bread, his fingers clenched before they reached it, and remained on the table, forgetful of their aim. I sat, a model of patience, trying to attract his absorbed attention from its engrossing speculation, till he grew irritable and got up, asking why I would not allow him to have his own time in taking his meals, and saying that on the next occasion I needn't wait, I might set the things down and go. Having uttered these words, he left the house, slowly sauntered down the garden path, and disappeared through the gate. The hours crept anxiously by. Another evening came. I did not retire to rest till late, and when I did, I could not sleep. He returned after midnight, and instead of going to bed, shut himself in the room beneath. I listened and tossed about, and finally dressed and descended. It was too irksome to lie there, harassing my brain with 100 idle misgivings. I distinguished Mr. Heathcliff's step. Restlessly measuring the floor, he frequently broke the silence by a deep inspiration, resembling a moan. He muttered detached words also. The only one I could catch was the name of Catherine, coupled with some wild term of endearment or suffering, and spoken as one would speak to a person present, low and earnest, and wrung from the depth of his soul. I had not courage to walk straight into the apartment, but I desired to divert him from his reverie, and therefore fell foul of the kitchen fire, stirred it, and began to scrape the cinders. It drew forth sooner than I expected. He opened the door immediately, and said, "Nellie, come here. Is it morning? Come in with your light." "It is striking 4, I answered. "You want a candle to take upstairs? You might have lit one at this fire." "No, I don't wish to go upstairs," he said. "Come in, and kindle me a fire, and do anything there is to do about the room." "I must blow the coals red first, before I can carry any," I replied, getting a chair from the bellows. He roamed to and fro, meantime, in a state approaching distraction, his heavy sighs succeeding each other so thick as to leave no space for common breathing between. "When day breaks I'll send for Green," he said. "I wish to make some legal inquiries of him, while I can bestow a thought on those matters, and while I can act calmly. I have not written my will yet, and how to leave my property I cannot determine. I wish I could annihilate it from the face of the earth." "I would not talk so, Mr. Heathcliff," I interposed. "Let your will be a while. You'll be spared to repent of your many injustices yet. I never expected that your nerves would be so disordered. They are, at present, marvelously so, however, and almost entirely through your own fault. The way you've passed these 3 days last might knock up a Titan. Do you take food, and some repose? You need only look at yourself in a glass to see how you require both. Your cheeks are hollow, your eyes are bloodshot, like a person starving with hunger and going blind with loss of sleep." "It is not my fault that I cannot eat or rest," he replied. "I assure you, it is through no settled designs. I'll do both, as soon as I possibly can. But you might as well bid a man struggling in the water rest within arm's length of the shore. I must reach it first, and then I'll rest." "Well, never mind Mr. Green. As to repenting of my injustices, I've done no injustice, and I repent of nothing. I'm too happy, and yet I'm not happy enough. My soul's bliss kills my body, but does not satisfy itself." "Happy, master?" I cried. "Strange happiness! If you would hear me without being angry, I might offer some advice that would make you happier." "What is that?" he asked. "Give it." "You are aware, Mr. Heathcliff," I said, "that from the time you were 13 years old, you have lived a selfish, unchristian life, and probably hardly had a Bible in your hands during all that period. You must have forgotten the contents of the book, and you may not have space to search it now. Could it be hurtful to send for someone, some minister of any denomination, it does not matter which, to explain it, and show you how very far you have erred from its precepts, and how unfit you will be for its heaven, unless a change takes place before you die?" "I'm rather obliged than angry, Nellie," he said, "for you remind me of the manner in which I desire to be buried. It is to be carried to the churchyard in the evening. You and Hareton may, if you please, accompany me, and mind, particularly, to notice that the sexton obeys my directions concerning the 2 coffins. No minister need come, nor need anything be said over me. I tell you, I have nearly attained my heaven, and that of others is altogether unvalued and uncoveted by me. And supposing you persevered in your obstinate fast, and died by that means, and they refused to bury you in the precincts of the kirk?" I said, shocked at his godless indifference. "How would you like it?" "They won't do that," he replied. "If they did, you must have me removed secretly, and if you neglect it, you shall prove, practically, that the dead are not annihilated." As soon as he heard that the other members of the family stirring, he retired to his den, and I breathed freer. But in the afternoon, while Joseph and Hareton were at their work, he came into the kitchen again, and, with a wild look, bid me come and sit in the house. He wanted somebody with him. I declined, telling him plainly that his strange talk and manner frightened me, and I had neither the nerve nor the will to be his companion alone. "I believe you think me a fiend," he said, with his dismal laugh, "something too horrible to live under a decent roof." Then, turning to Catherine, who was there, and who drew behind me at his approach, he added, half sneeringly, "Will you come, Chuck? I'll not hurt you. No. To you I've made myself worse than the devil. Well, there's one who won't shrink from my company. By God, she's relentless. Oh, damn it. It's unutterably too much for flesh and blood to bear, even mine." He solicited the society of no one more. At dusk he went into his chamber. Through the whole night, and far into the morning, we heard him groaning and murmuring to himself. Hareton was anxious to enter, but I bid him fetch Mr. Kenneth, and he should go in and see him. When he came, and I requested admittance and tried to open the door, I found it locked, and Heathcliff bid us be damned. He was better, and would be left alone, so the doctor went away. The following evening was very wet. Indeed, it poured down till day dawn, and I took my morning walk round the house. I observed the master's window swinging open, and the rain driving straight in. He cannot be in bed, I thought. Those showers would drench him through. He must either be up or out. But I'll make more ado. I'll go boldly and look. Having succeeded in obtaining entrance with another key, I ran to unclose the panels, for the master was vacant. Quickly pushing them aside, I peeped in. Mr. Heathcliff was there, laid on his back. His eyes met mine, so keen and fierce. I started, and then he seemed to smile. I could not think him dead, but his face and throat were washed with rain. The bedclothes dripped, and he was perfectly still. The lattice, flapping to and fro, had grazed one hand that rested on the sill. No blood trickled from the broken skin, and when I put my fingers to it, I could doubt no more. He was dead and stark. I hasped the window, combed his black long hair from his forehead. I tried to close his eyes, to extinguish, if possible, that frightful, lifelike gaze of exultation before anyone else beheld it. They would not shut. They seemed to sneer at my attempts, and his parted lips and sharp white teeth sneered too. Taken with another fit of cowardice, I cried out for Joseph. Joseph shuffled up and made a noise, but resolutely refused to meddle with him. "The devil's harried off his soul," he cried. "He may have his carcass into the bargain, for aught I care. Ech, what a wicked un he looks, grinning at death." And the old sinner grinned in mockery. I thought he intended to cut a caper around the bed, but suddenly, composing himself, he fell on his knees and raised his hands, and returned, thanks that the lawful master and his ancient stock were restored to their rights. I felt stunned by the awful event, and my memory unavoidably recurred to former times with a sort of oppressive sadness. But poor Hareton, the most wronged, was the only one who really suffered much. He sat by the corpse all night, weeping in bitter earnest. He pressed its hand, and kissed the sarcastic, savage face that everyone else shrank from contemplating, and bemoaned him with that strong grief which springs naturally from a generous heart, though it be tough as tempered steel. Mr. Kenneth was perplexed to pronounce of what disorder the master died. I concealed the fact of his having swallowed nothing for 4 days, fearing it might lead to trouble, and then, I am persuaded, he did not abstain on purpose. It was the consequence of his strange illness, not the cause. We buried him, to the scandal of the whole neighborhood, as he wished. Earnshaw and I, the sexton, and 6 men to carry the coffin, comprehended the whole attendance. The 6 men departed when they had let it down into the grave. We stayed to see it covered. Hareton, with a streaming face, dug green sods, and I laid them over the brown mold himself. At present it is as smooth and verdant as its companion mounds, and I hope its tenant sleeps as soundly. But the country folks, if you ask them, would swear on the Bible that he walks. There are those who speak to having met him near the church, and on the moor, and even within this house. Idle tales, you'll say, and so say I. Yet that old man by the kitchen fire affirms he has seen 2 on him looking out of his chamber window on every rainy night since his death. And an odd thing happened to me about a month ago. I was going to the Grange one evening, a dark evening, threatening thunder, and just at the turn of the heights, I encountered a little boy with sheep and 2 lambs before him. He was crying terribly, and I supposed the lambs were skittish and would not be guided. "What is the matter, my little man?" I asked. "There's Heathcliff and a woman yonder under Tanab," he blurbered, "and I dare not pass him." I saw nothing, but neither the sheep nor he would go on, so I bid him take the road lower down. He probably raised the phantoms from thinking, as he traversed the moors alone, on the nonsense he had heard his parents and companions repeat. Yet still, I don't like being out in the dark now, and I don't like being left by myself in this grim house. I cannot help it. I shall be glad when they leave it and shift to the Grange. "They are going to the Grange, then?" I asked. "Yes," answered Mrs. Dean, "as soon as they are married, and that will be on New Year's Day." "And who will live here, then?" "Why, Joseph will take care of the house, and perhaps a lad to keep him company. They will live in the kitchen, and the rest will be shut up." "For the use of such ghosts as choose to inhabit it?" I observed. "No, Mr. Lockwood," said Nellie, shaking her head. "I believe the dead are at peace, but it is not right to speak of them with levity." At that moment the garden gate swung to, and the ramblers were returning. "They are afraid of nothing," I grumbled, watching their approach through the window. "Together they would brave Satan and all his legions." As they stepped onto the doorstones and halted to take a last look at the moon, or more correctly, at each other by her light, I felt irresistibly impelled to escape them again, and, pressing a remembrance into the hand of Mrs. Dean, and disregarding her expostulations of Emma rudeness, I vanished through the kitchen as they opened the house door, and so should have confirmed Joseph in his opinion of his fellow servant's gay indiscretions, had he not fortunately recognized me for a respectable character by the sweet ring of a sovereign at his feet. My walk home was lengthened by a diversion in the direction of the kirk, when beneath its walls I perceived decay had made progress. Even in 7 months, many a window showed black gaps deprived of glass, and slates jutted off, here and there, beyond the right line of the roof, to be gradually worked off in coming autumn storms. I sought, and soon discovered, the 3 headstones on the slope next to the moor, the middle one grey, and half buried in heath. Edgar Linton's only harmonized by the turf and moss creeping up its foot, Heathcliff's still bare. I lingered round them, under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. And that is the end of Wuthering Heights. So that's a way to go. I guess Heathcliff more or less willed himself to death. All his works and all that needed to be done were finished. His revenge complete, more or less. And just decided that he was finished. There wasn't any life left to be done. And then the intimations and hintings of the haunting of Wuthering Heights and the Grange and the moors, and just the last line to be left. Just there's how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers under that quiet earth. That was a nice line. Catherine and Edgar and Heathcliff under the hills. All right, I'm gonna step away for a minute. I'm gonna grab a drink, or gonna update my drink, check on the cats, and then we'll take a few minutes to talk about the book and just have some thoughts. So we'll be back in just a little while. Try and collect my thoughts a little bit, and so we'll be ready for a quick discussion. All right, thanks, guys. Okay, we are back. Let me update my drink here. I definitely think that scotch is better for thinking and idle talk than coffee, at least in my opinion. So we will have a bit of a sip tonight. So yeah, that was Wuthering Heights. You're right. The last 3 or 4 chapters, probably the last 4 or so, definitely leaned into more of the gothic fiction side, where there's a lot more gray. There's a lot more melancholy throughout. There's no like redemption to be had, but there's also not any like great resolution. It's left at the end more or less how things began. It's dreary, it's glum, it's gloomy, but it's not entirely without hope. It's kind of indicative of the theme and the common thing. Yeah. So there are 2 things of notice where literature: one is a man scorned who leaves, makes his fortune, returns bitter and spiteful. The other is terrible, insufferable people who soften over the course of the story. Both, it took a more generational approach to the softening of all. Yeah, you're right. That is very much a common theme. The people tend to like in this genre, in this era, there were a lot of someone goes off and makes their fortune, but comes back jaded and changed, but they come back and made their own. This exemplifies that. Heathcliff went off and nobody even knows where he went off, what he did, anything. Completely a mystery. He started off pretty bitter and spiteful, but he if anything, that intensified on his return. And then the terrible and insufferable people, which really makes every character in this book. But the generational approach is absolutely true. The whole thing spanned the course of, I think it was about with 3 generations were evinced. There was the original father that brought in Heathcliff, and then Heathcliff and Catherine and that generation, and then their children respectively. So yeah, it's three generations in one, and you kind of see the whole arc where the first generation seemed as if they were good, honest folk. The father brought in Heathcliff as he found him on the street while he was out to the city. Took him in completely. I mean, Heathcliff was obviously not from there, not one of them. He was very, very clearly the other. And took him in, was a good man, at least trying to be a good man. But then, by his taking him in and giving him attention, his own son felt slighted. And that set things on a track to go completely off the rails downhill. And then we reached sort of the bottom point in that second generation with Heathcliff and Catherine and Edgar, where he was purported to be like the Lintons were purported to be like the higher, the more noble of spirit, the good folk, the well-bred. But even then, there was darkness there, where they were possessive and pushed out. Yeah, you're right. The romance that goes beyond the grave, that was never meant to be in the first place. We look at Heathcliff was, by being infatuated with Catherine, especially for the time, where like there was no social mobility whatsoever. Like that just wasn't a thing. So Heathcliff's love was way above his station, and Catherine's was way below hers, because she was self-assured that she was in love with Heathcliff in her own way. If that goes back to that line, my love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it. I'm well aware as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. So looking back, that was still early in the book, but that is like the hallmark quote where it sets the tone for so much. Heathcliff was like, the attachment for Heathcliff was underneath, out of sight, away from mind and thought, but was the anchor and the foundation for Catherine's life and for the way the lives of everyone at the Grange and the Heights, their lives played out. Because it just became the motivation for everything. But then that flipped around as like how it was fully out of sight, out of mind, became spiteful and painful and irritant to Heathcliff himself, to everyone, and it just shows that it all fell to pieces. And like you said, it just pursued everything and pushed everyone to the most awful possible outcome. The only thing that was even close to a happy ending throughout this whole thing was the younger Catherine and Hareton getting together in a Roll Tide moment. But they found happiness in each other. Hareton overcame his intentional upbringing to be something more than just a brute. That was Heathcliff's grand design at the time, was to raise him to be nothing, to be just a man of the earth and nothing more, not able to express thought, not able to take joy. The family tree gets a little tangled, okay? It happens. But yeah, that was actually one of the better character arcs, I think, was Hareton's. Because he was brought up, and very early, Nellie was taking care of him, and his own father was just absolutely terrible, wanted to kill him. If you remember, he was strangling him over the stairs and dropped him down, and Heathcliff had to save him. So he started in the worst of the worst, the absolute most horrific environment for a child. And then to top that off, after his father died, Heathcliff took fostership of him and endeavored through every act, every decision, every moment to make him worse, to make him a pitiful, unpitiable sort, where he would drive away any possible hope for compassion, and drove out any sort of curiosity, any sort of mindfulness, anything. And then through that, we saw maybe some minor jealousy, some pettiness shine through as he got older, especially when Catherine and then the younger Linton were bound and were interacting with each other. But I think through that he sort of grew and rediscovered his own curiosity, and that's like against all the adversity, all the trials and challenges that they put through, that he could grow up and be a good man. Yeah, it's even back then, because the cycle of abuse, it's a constant. It's something that is very hard to overcome. The saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, has been around for generations, and it will continue to be around, because you as you grow, you repeat what you know. But to recognize what you know, what you've seen, what your life has been to be wrong, to be heinous, to be abhorred, and to make the choice to do something different, that's a really hard choice to make. So the fact that even then it was shown that it was possible to make that choice was good. That's an impactful way to show it. And this book showed both. So there were those that were raised in bad ways and stayed that way the entire time. Linton Younger was raised well, but in the environment of being hated, being scorned, being abused and disabused, carried that on himself and was awful to Catherine. Um, Catherine the Elder was good herself, or was her parents were good to her, but she was raised in such a way that those around her were not great people, and she pushed that out, and then her own attitude toward her husband and her sister-in-law was terrible, and that just cascaded everything down. So we see both examples of this, where there were those that could overcome that abuse and take it and see it as an example of what not to do, and others that internalized it. It's sort of a warning that there's no guarantees that you can do everything. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it was a bit controversial. I mean, it's got the usurper Heathcliff. It's got the old blood family that just fell to pieces. It's got the religious connotations where Joseph is basically a meme of the devout Christian of the rural lifestyle, and then there's the all the hangers on, and even Nellie. I mean, she was the narrator for most of it, but even she was not blameless in a lot of things, and spurned a lot of things. So yeah, I could definitely see this being controversial. And I think, if I remember right, this is kind of a departure from what the Brontë sisters usually would have written. So it was kind of stuck out in that way. Because normally people would pick up a book from one of the Brontë sisters and expect something a little bit more, not necessarily lighthearted, but this one is definitely more of it leans into the dreary, the oppressive side of things. And if that's not what you're looking for when you read through it, you can come away feeling crushed. So I could definitely see that being the case. This does make me wonder why. It was a good book. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot in it. There's a lot to unpack. There's themes. There's ideas. The characters, as much as I hate them, were engaging. It's been It was interesting to watch it all unfold and how it played out. Personally, I could have ended about 4 chapters from the end and been satisfied, but seeing the final conclusion was good too. But I don't see how it could have it seems to me to have a sort of outsized influence. It seems like it would be much more niche than it is, because it's not a happy story. There's not a good ending. It's not a romance that people can see and hold to, or the romance that's in there is like toxic to the extreme. But you see people who like set their lives by some of the quotes from this book, and who want to emulate and feel the sort of love that Catherine has, when it's a twisted beast of a love. It's kind of I don't know. It's frustrating sometimes that people will take certain things to heart without looking at the whole, I suppose. But I can understand. It's sometimes with the whole is too much to take in. Sometimes it's easier to cherry pick out parts that resonate rather than look at them in their context. And maybe I'm being too judgmental of it. Maybe that's the proper way to go about it. Maybe you find things in literature as in life that speak to you. They don't necessarily need to speak their whole story to you, but they can have their piece said. Well, yeah, I didn't dislike this book. I will say that now. But I don't see why it's stuck in the public consciousness so much. But I'll not judge. It's obviously high literature. It's good. It's well put together. The high diction, the caricatures, the human drama. It was all really well put together. But there's no role models to take out of this. There's no lessons to be learned as a shining example. If anything, it's a warning. And a lot of the references you see to it never mention how bleak it is. You never see the warning against the revenge, the obsession, the toxic connections, the abuse, everything. You don't see any of that, and some of it was just straight up horrifying. There were more than a few points where I had to stop and have a moment. And it wasn't just Heathcliff. There were a lot of people and a lot of things that were just heinous. But you don't hear anything of that. Really, you hear that quote for Catherine loving Linton and Heathcliff. You see reference to Heathcliff as some dark, mysterious, handsome stranger. You don't see that I hesitate to say it, but you don't see the evil that lies under the surface. That's what it is. Heathcliff was evil. I think a lot of it is that so many people, don't really engage and read through the entirety of things like this, like classics. They hear reference to it. You get the memes, you get I won't call it like TikTok culture because it's existed long before that, but people will catch a quote or hear it talked of or catch some spark notes and think, oh, that sounds great. But when you look at it in the whole, when you actually sit down, you see so much more. And you're right. It's a lot of works. It's not just this one, but this one really sparks. You see it, and when I picked it out, I knew we'd have thoughts like this. But yeah, exactly. You're spot on. The cultural osmosis of having it been talked about, or seeing it referenced by other works, but without experiencing it directly, without that first-person experience, you can't see the whole or the context of those quotes and the references and the bits and pieces that you're absorbing. And that can be dangerous. That can be true for a lot of things, where you can just form malformed opinions or references or ideas that exist untethered from their source, untethered from the actuality. And I'm not to say that I'm not looking down on people that do that, and it's not a bad thing for these sort of things to seep into the collective consciousness. But I do think that it would behoove anyone to, if you've experienced that sort of phenomenon, the being familiarized with a work, being influenced by a work, to go to that work and see it and read it and understand it for yourself. There's so much for us to take from these classical works. Yeah, it would be wonderful if it led to more interaction with the original works. And I'm not familiar, I'm sure this has been adapted to, if not a movie, a play or something. But it's been around for so long. Actually, I need to look that up now. I wonder if that's the case. Okay, yeah, so it was adapted several times. You're right. So I won't say you need to go to the original. Absolutely, it's not for everyone. It's kind of dense. But you know what? Sometimes a terrible wig is exactly what you need to break up the monotony of a film. But yeah, watching a movie or an adaptation or anything of the sort is totally fine. It gets a better understanding of what there is than just the passive osmosis. I will always advocate for reading the originals. I love this format we're doing. I love the reading and the discussing, but it's not for everyone. Um, but having some exposure to the whole is important. Um, so yeah, if you get the exposure, implore anyone who might be listening, if you've got some exposure, some influence by a work, use that as a launching pad, a stepping off point to find your own interest in the original. Find where it came from. If you wonder if you've seen references to things, even memes. If you see a meme that it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. Why is it referenced? Why is it important? Why is it here in the cultural zeitgeist? Go to where it started. See it for yourself. Embrace it. Experience it for yourself, and maybe understand why and how it's interesting. It may change your viewpoint on how a thing is referenced. It may, like we've mentioned here, the cultural obsession of it may be only a part. It may only be a piece, and the context can lay on additional understanding for yourself and for others. But I'll get off my soapbox here. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. This was a good book. It brought up good discussion. I hated the characters. I still hate the characters. Yes, read more. Or listen to me. But that is what it is. I guess we should think what we want to read next. We ended on the Gothic note. We came from here. Before this, we read The King in Yellow, where things got a little weird, and then a little less weird, and then French. Oh, French. So we've kind of had a spattering all over the place. So where do we go from here? Do we want to go scary? Do we want to go classic horror? Do we want to go way back? Oh, Joseph. I'm not sure which one tormented me more, the French or Joseph. With Joseph, it kind of became fun because you go with it. You don't try and be accurate. You just make noises and it'll work. You're not really meant to understand him anyway. The French, I at least felt like I was insulting the entire nation, the history and culture. But Joseph. You know what? I'm going to take a quick look here. Gutenberg's got a lovely browse for what is frequently downloaded. We've got, up toward the top, there's, Moby Dick, Frankenstein, Pride and Prejudice, oh lordy. A simple sabotage field manual. No, I don't think we'll go that route. Okay, so there are quite a few really interesting works here. We could go very old, things all the way back to the 1100s. Oh, these are download counts, okay. You know what, I'll probably just look for a couple days. If anyone has any suggestions, feel free to hit me up on Bluesky. But I'll browse through here and see if there's anything that catches my eye. And we'll come up with something to read next. But I think we'll probably end here early tonight. We had a good discussion on the book, a nice reflection. I had my soapbox moment. I try not to get too preachy. I'm sorry if it comes off that way sometimes. We saw the end of the book. And yeah, if you see anything at all, please feel free to hit me up. I really enjoyed your suggestion of The King in Yellow. One of these days we'll probably go jump into Lovecraft. Maybe we'll go and read old Bram Stoker sometime. There's so many options in the public domain. We've got thousands of different books we can choose from. It's really such a great resource, and there's so much wonderful literature out there that is either overlooked or is a classic of classics that everyone knows but maybe hasn't read yet. Those are totally great to read too. So I think we'll end here tonight. Please, have a wonderful evening. And if you have any suggestions or anything you want to read together or hear me narrate, even if it's French, not all French, at least. I do need at least mostly English. But if you just want to torture me, that's fine too. We'll get through it together. Because you know what? If you make me read it, I'm going to make you listen to it. So, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and I thank you very much for joining us for this reading of Wuthering Heights. Always please remember to read, enjoy, experience media, whatever way it comes to you. Use the cultural reference, the osmosis, as a launch pad to find out more, to learn more, and experience the world around you. Have a wonderful night, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. Bye.